And so we're very pleased to have Kelle Cruz give our first keynote for this workshop on building a community of Python users in astronomy.
Thank you. Right, so the working title which I was given was something like, and it says in the thing, educational resources something, and I never think about this topic in that way, actually. I never think about it as educational resources. I always think about it as what are the most efficient use of our time in order to bring more people, astronomers, non-astronomers, students, professors, anyone, into this community of both Python users, of documentation editors, of developers, right, into the community that supports this large infrastructure. And so I feel like that helps me frame it a little bit more as in terms of community building rather than just making educational resources. The point of the educational resources is to build the community. I want to tell you a little bit about all of my affiliations. I like to think of myself as the expert, non-expert, right? I really, I appreciate coming into projects being a non-developer, being a novice of GitHub, and sort of being that like, oh no, I find this really intimidating. How can you, the developer, you know, let's try to lower that barrier to entry. I don't know what that word means. I don't know what rebasing means. You know, this is all jargon, and I really enjoy playing that particular role. I am an assistant professor at CUNY Hunter College. It's on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. That's my teaching office, so I'm teaching intro physics for electricity and magnetism, Halliday and Resnick right now. That's where 9 months of my paycheck comes from. That's also my reality check. I'm the only astronomer in a physics department, and so that's also, right, in astronomy we have the privilege in many ways of hanging out with astronomers, which is sometimes a burden, but it could be physicists, it could be worse, right? And so it makes me very appreciative of astronomers. I'm also a research associate at the AMH Astrophysics Department. And so one of my career goals early on was I never wanted to be the only astronomer in a physics department. Like that to me was one of the worst things I could do for my career. But I am a very active member of the astrophysics group at the American Museum of Natural History, which is on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. And so I commute, and I live on the Upper West Side, and I commute through Central Park. Basically, I have my dream job. I just wanted to let y'all know. But it can happen. And this is also, right, my dream job was not an advertised position. Right, and so I had to figure out what I was looking for and be able to cobble it together and make it happen when I saw the opportunity. And I think that's a really important, you know, talking to Eric's comment about, you know, how are we going to get the jobs? I think we also, it helps everyone to sort of like broaden your idea. Your dream job is probably not going to be an advertised position. You know, you may need to use your resources and to use your creativity to be able to turn what opportunities you have available to you into your particular dream job. I'm also the founder and editor of AstroBetter and the newly incorporated Science Better consulting firm, which I hope which maybe I will do a lightning talk about. And so this is my passion. It's also my niche, and maybe future paychecks we'll see. Time will tell. And I'm also chair of the AAS Employment, the American Astronomical Society Employment Committee. And I became chair of the Employment Committee after I got involved in a lot of professional development things, after I started organizing professional development workshops at the AAS winter meeting. And it's been a really important lesson in the importance of actually getting a real title and working within the system rather than working to subvert the system or around the system. Being the chair of the professional societies committee has actually made me much more effective at a lot of the things that I want to do, and I think that's something which we can start doing maybe more in this community, and we don't necessarily have to be underground quite so much. Yeah, access to the establishment. So I also wanted to briefly take this opportunity. I very much appreciate being the first keynote speaker, and so I wanted to briefly talk about. Well, first I wanted to thank the organizers for really having a clear code of conduct and having it well organized at the beginning of the meeting. That's really great. I also want to talk a little about the Astronomy Allies program, which is essentially just a safe zone. So we're at a conference, we're in a foreign place, we have lots of strangers. Uncomfortable things can happen at conferences, and so the Astronomy Allies program is basically just a network of people. I think I'm the only official astronomy ally here, but I wear the Astronomy Ally button, and so if And if there's just an uncomfortable situation, please feel free to tweet at me, or to, you can also talk to any of the organizers, but this is just a new program which we're working on to make conferences safe and enjoyable for everyone. Okay, so I had to make some assumptions. And so this is sort of my assumption of what I think our shared vision is. And I think based on all the lightning talks, I would say I've only made one wrong assumption, which I will get to in a minute. And I think our shared vision is what we would like to see is that our students are given adequate time and resources to learn fundamental coding skills, which they are currently not, right? It's ridiculous, but they are not. I would also like to say that, especially being a faculty member in a physics department, the prospect of getting coding and things like that into the undergraduate curricula is very, very challenging. And I don't think it's going to happen in the way that we would like to see it anytime soon. And it's something which we need to work out how to do in creative and in innovative ways. We would also like to see a critical mass of astronomers implement coding best practices that enable reproducibility and adaptation. So I think we want it to make it a societal norm that people know how to comment code. We want to make it a societal norm that when people do publish code, no matter how, when people use code in their published science results, no matter how messy, they publish it somewhere, right? They put it on GitHub. And so just this implementation of best practices. And we don't need everybody to do it. We don't need buy-in from everyone. We just need critical mass. And I think that it's I've heard a lot of people say that they want to convert the stubborn, I will call them. I don't like to put age brackets on stubborn. I have given up on that particular goal. I find it just to be too frustrating, and not. I think it's just not an efficient necessarily use of time. Why convert the stubborn when we have all the new people into the field, or the people who are already, shall we call them Python curious, you know, who are ideal questioning, right?
Pi curious. I think would be better, right?
Pi curious. How do you come up with jokes like that, just like on the fly? I'm sorry. So I think it's just much more efficient to spend our time developing resources and making workshops and doing tutorials for people who are interested, who want to spend time on it, rather than being like, no, IDL sucks for this reason. Like, let them be, right? Just let them be. Let's get as many of the interested converted as possible, and then in a decade we'll be critical mass, right? I already think that in the sort of postdoc generation and younger, they may be quiet about it at their own institution, but then you talk about that they're all about open science, they're all about Python, they're all about shared resources. And so it's my personal opinion that we focus on that community rather than necessarily the stubborn. The stubborn, let them be. And then the third thing is that the programming and software development skills and contributions are valued and rewarded. And that's also a hard one, and I think that's going to be the one that takes the most time. And I think that also, being a faculty member in a physics department in a primary liberal arts college, getting the tenure and promotion standards changed, getting hiring things changed, it's going to be very difficult. And I think that the best thing that we can do as a community, as I don't even know what to call our community. Usually I call it the .astro community, but maybe I will call it the progressive computing community, is to look out for each other and to recognize that it won't take us too long before we're writing tenure letters for each other, before we're on hiring committees for each other, when we're reading each other's telescope proposals and grant proposals specifically, and being able to have these core values extended through the community via our own infiltration and proselytizing. All right. So good. So I didn't see too many people being like, no, I don't hold that value. I saw a lot of head nodding, but maybe there's some bias there. Maybe that was some. And so the cold hard truth is that most of these will not be implemented by those currently in positions of power, right? Just stop hoping. Don't your department chairs have other things going on. Even faculty members already, like I get only negative feedback when I try to change the curricula, right? It's just too hard. And so it's just not going to happen. Why haven't they done this yet? Well, because it's really hard to do. So the getting these skills and everything, sort of making the plan while you're graduate students and postdocs so you can implement them sneakily as assistant faculty, I think is actually probably one of the best routes we can go. And so we must make it happen ourselves by infiltrating from the bottom. That's my plan, right? And that's also demonstrated, right? The people who are here, the people who are active and contributing are for the most part junior, but you won't be junior forever. Right? I know, right? You won't be junior forever. That's my plan, at least, right? Right? That's if that doesn't happen, then we've got a problem. And so the way I think about the big picture is that we want to constantly strive to build, so to get new users into the community, and to build and grow are similar words, but also support the people who are already, who exist within the community. So to support the community of contributors, developers, and educators. And so I do think of it as our individual departments, may not be the source that brings us joy, the people that give us pep talks. Are the ones that really value our contributions. But as long as we develop a strong community and we have a shared trust and we can take faith falls with each other, then I think that will give us the strength to both power on, be successful, and then hopefully make a better scientific community for everybody in the near future. And so I think I've already said this. So the guiding, we want to get them young, right? Is the and I think that's a really, it's just efficient, right? I'm all about efficiency, right? I just want to go where's it going to be easiest? So, and I don't think of it. The Venn diagram is good, but I want to be sure we recognize that today's novices are the next decade's developers. And so just because you don't know Git now, or just because I don't know the first thing about the indent, I know indentation matters, right? Actually, I'm actually not the best example. My undergraduates are the best examples, right? They're the ones who now know Git, now are learning a little, they know that AstroPy exists. But my goodness, since I got them started as undergrads, by the time they're grad students, they're going to be contributing packages. I know it, right? I know it. And so I think targeting the most junior people is going to be the most efficient. And I think we want to focus a lot of our educational efforts at the entry points. So once you're a part of the community, like I know that I can tweet at Tom, or I can tweet at Eric, or I can just run, go uptown and spend some time at Columbia with Adrian Price Whelan, and I can solve a hard problem, right? I'm in the community and I know how to use the resources. I think it's much, much, much harder for an individual or for an undergraduate or for a graduate student who doesn't know about the community to start making issues, to start editing code. And so I think we really want to focus a lot on how that scared, intimidated, novice, typically student, what are all the ways that we can lower their barrier to entry? And I don't even want to think about it as lowering the barrier to entry as it is how much can we pull them into the community, right? How can we really incentivize it? How can we make it look like this is the coolest, funnest thing ever? So once they're in, the support structures don't need to be as strong. I also just think it's a little bit interesting. So I was raised a Jehovah's Witness. And so this concept of proselytizing and going door to door and really being like, have you heard the good news yet? It's kind of in my blood. And a lot of the language is really similar. Like the good news, like, do you know the truth about Python? Sorry?
Preach.
Yeah, preach it, right? Yeah, although the Jehovah's Witnesses are much more low-key than that. And anyway, so that I think it's interesting that to know a little bit about that history. And so the one assumption that I did make, I didn't anticipate everybody to be so excited about the educational resources. And so I apologize for underestimating you. And so I pushed on this really hard in that we are the ones that really need to make this vision a reality, right? There's no they, there's no, oh, I wish someone would have done this. How come this isn't done yet, right? If ever you hear, right, there's only us. So if ever you hear, we really should, don't just drop it. At least write a note somewhere, or write a tweet somewhere, right? We have to figure out a way to implement that idea, even if it's only on a small scale. And so that, when you think about the they or we or I wish someone would, turn that back around and look at yourself and realize, like, oh crap, there is no they, there is no, right? There's only us, there's only, and a lot of times there's only you. And our community is quite small, but the beautiful thing is that not only is this particular community quite small, but the astronomy community is also quite small. And so small efforts can actually really go a long way. And so I encourage, throughout this week, what would be really awesome is that if everyone here had an idea of this is the community building activity that I'm going to participate in, that I'm going to contribute to. I think that would be awesome, right? That would be, and so it doesn't have to be something, it should be something which you're like, oh, that sounds like so much fun, or oh, I'm doing this anyway, or oh, this is something I'm really excited about. It shouldn't be something which you're hesitant to do, right? You want to find something that you're inclined to do anyway, that fits in with your natural workflow. And so as part of this talk, what I want to do is essentially show you a whole bunch of the essentially community resources that we already have, the community resources which we need to have, and then essentially give you the options of where we could use help. And so on each of the slides where I'm talking about the resources which exist, I also have like an issue list of places where things you could contribute. And then I also tweeted the link to the Google Doc. And so as you have ideas, please brainstorm, please use that Google Doc to brainstorm. I think probably each one of my slides could be its own unconference session. We can't do that, right? We can't do all of the things. That's the other thing. We can't do all of the things. So we have to choose just a couple of the things to focus on where we're going to have the biggest audience, where we have the most people interested in playing a role, right? And so I think using the Google Doc will help us figure out where what community resources we should spend the most time on. Okay, so let me start with the things that already exist is the AstroPy mailing list. And so I don't know what, let's see, 500 plus 200, so there's 700 people on the AstroPy users mailing list. This is a great mailing list. This is absolutely, it's a lot of people read it, the experts read it, you get quick answers to questions. I think it's perfect for intermediate users is the way I think about it, right? They're confident in their ability to articulate what their problem is. It's an active, friendly community. I would say that I really do appreciate, I think it's really important to recognize how important the tone is that we set in each of these communities. And I'm very, very pleased with the tone that is set on the mailing list. However, it is still intimidating to newbies. There's still a lot of jargon. You still have to know what your question is. You still have to, if you look at the archives are just full of jargon. And how do I install PyFits is not necessarily going to be the most on topic or comfortable post. It's also not easily discoverable. I feel like you really only find out about the mailing list once you're in the community. It's also not easily searchable. Every forum is going to have pluses and minuses. The goal is not to make every single one of them perfect, just to recognize their pros and cons. And so some ideas that I had was to make a tweet bot for new posts. I don't know, because I never check the mailing list. But a tweet bot, and then that may also spark other discussions. I think that may also, like if I retweeted something, that may just raise the visibility of the mailing list. So an idea which we had last night at dinner, which was like the best working dinner I've had in a really long time, was to start essentially an ambassador program. So if you're very active on the mailing list, or if you read the mailing list frequently, and you're also on Twitter a lot, or on Facebook a lot, whatever, some other social media, to share those relevant posts which you find on the mailing list to some other platform. So just to help disseminate the information from the mailing list onto some other forums. And so we're thinking of maybe having ambassadors to the Facebook Astronomers group, ambassadors to Twitter, ambassadors to whatever social media channel you would like to, ambassadors to Instagram, I'm not sure, right? Whatever. Snapchat doesn't work that, yeah. Anyway. All right. So we also have Twitter, and I love this post by Davenport, which was been tinkering with a Python long slit spectra package. Some words about that. I would love your thoughts. And it seemed like from reading his post that he had no idea about all the history behind the specutals development. And so through that one tweet, he got, very quickly learned about all this stuff going on. And so Twitter has definitely proved to be a very useful place to learn about things and to figure out who are the people that we should be bringing into the community. So it's a large, helpful community. However, the community is essentially invisible. It's like you tweet into a dark room and you have no, right? This post has no tags. It has no, right, I just happened to follow James, because astronomy is small, but he didn't even tag it Python, right? There's no, and so you really, there's a lot of sort of luck and trust involved in sending a tweet out into the universe and hoping that maybe the right person follows you, or someone's going to retweet it, or someone's going to, file it in the right direction. And that's really scary for people coming in, people who are both new to Twitter, don't know how Twitter works, and people who don't know how this particular community works and doesn't have the faith yet that that someone following them is going to be like, oh, you should talk to this person who develops that package. It's also not well archived or easily searchable, but it serves a very, I'm just putting the concept there. I'm not saying we shouldn't use it. It's just positive. I think a Twitter list of the Python and astronomy community could be useful. Just if you're new to Twitter, or if you're new to Python, here's, you can follow this list to see what are the kinds of things that we talk about. I'm not sure about this. It's just something to think about if someone wanted to develop a hashtag taxonomy for the different packages, and then to have different. So like if you develop the SunPy package, and then there is a hashtag that's then you follow those hashtags so that you can essentially, so that it doesn't necessarily feel like you're tweeting into a black room. You actually have like some way of saying like, oh, it looks like these would be the relevant hashtags to my question, and then have some faith that that's going to alert somebody somewhere who's following that hashtag. For a lot of these things, I think a getting started guide would be really useful. Like, hey, new to Python, here's the way Twitter works. Here's the way that, here are some example tweets. This is the kind of tweet which makes sense. Here's a list of where the hashtags are. Here's the kind of people that you want to follow. Or you can always just do @AstroPy, and that'll call someone's attention, right? Just a getting started guide to Twitter, and then be an ambassador. So to essentially to cross-post, right? Cross-post whatever information you find on whatever forum to Twitter would be helpful. Facebook, right? The platform we all love to hate. The pros, so we have the Facebook Astronomers group. The forum, which we all love to hate. And I love this, right? The pros of Facebook is that lots of people are on it, and the cons are that lots of people are on it. Lots of people shun it for a good reason. I have found the Astronomers Facebook group in particular to be extremely insightful into the harsh reality of our community, I guess is the way I would want to phrase it. And I think in that, but if something's posted to the Astronomers Facebook group, even if you're not on Facebook, people typically hear about it, right? It's like, oh, did you see that post on Facebook? No, I didn't hear about it. Oh, well, this is what's going on, right? And so it's something which is talked about a lot. And I think that for that reason, it's an extremely visible, useful resource for us to spread the good word, right? I think one of the first, I think we do need a dedicated Python and astronomy Facebook group. It's kind of surprising to me that we don't have one. We don't have one, right? No, yeah, we don't have one. So having one makes sense. And so really all we're doing by creating all of these different forums is so that there's a presence wherever anyone ends up posting a question, right? We want people to get the sense that this is a community which is out there and is present and if you say, I need help, someone will be like, oh, I can help you. Like whichever forum they use, that they feel that there's a welcoming, not trusting. They want to have trust that someone will be there to answer their questions, right? That's what they want, to help them get the analysis done. Because you can't just start a new programming language and then be like, but I really need reduced spectra. Here's a cookbook to do it in IRAF. There's not as much confidence that I'm going to be able to go from start to finish in Python yet. And so that's really what we need to address. And to be an ambassador to the Astronomers Facebook group, and I volunteer to do at least some of that. I am not as afraid as other people are of the Astronomers Facebook group. So a new one, which I learned about last night, is this Gator IRC chat room. I don't even feel qualified to talk about it. So it's an active real-time forum. I really like that it has the GitHub integration. So I think one of the big barriers to entry is GitHub. And so the more we can expose people to GitHub and the more friendly we make GitHub and the more, so I also think in terms of getting rewards for our contributions, I think we need to figure out some metrics to put GitHub activity onto our CVs. And I think we need to come up with some standardized way of doing that so that if we all agree like these are the metrics that we care about and put them on our CV so they start being something that search committees see, right? But if we make it standardized, anyway, more GitHub integration, the better. It's just less different, scary compared to Twitter, Facebook, email lists. At least you can see the people who are in the chat room. So here are the people. I think yellow is there, but not active. I assume it turns green if they're actually active in the chat room. And so it does feel like a little bit more of a face-to-face interaction because you can see the avatars of the people who are present. And there's relatively few users, so I think it's something like 12, 15? Yeah, okay, something like that. And it's also not well archived or easily searchable, but it is a place that you can just go in and be like, I don't know where to start with this, and someone will be there. Yeah, Stuart.
The AstroPy IRC channel is even quieter than their GitHub channel, but there is an archive and you can search for it. And same with the SunPy IRC channel because I run it on my server.
As opposed to the Gator,
where you can only scroll back through and look through Gator. There's no archive for Gator.
You can't search. I thought you can search.
Oh, can you? I don't know. Maybe. Oh yeah, you can. Yeah, all right, fine. But you still have to log in to Gator to search it, whereas the IRC thing is open on the web.
At least this is a web. The IRC is just a.
There are web clients for it.
Oh, okay.
I just tweeted one out if anyone wants to join. There's a nice web client.
Okay. Also an option which probably needs a user guide. Right, so a getting started guide. I think both for us, right? I didn't know about it, and so this is definitely one of the places where I can point my undergraduates, because my undergraduates are asking me questions about packages which I don't know the answers to. And so this is, I would encourage other people to join this and to be an ambassador for this one as well. And so by being an ambassador for the Gator IRC channels, I would say that means that you're agreeing to be active on it, right? To have it on, regularly. We're not going to give you hours or anything, but just as, this is a medium which I'm comfortable with, which I'm happy to spend some time on. Stack Overflow, I'm actually kind of excited about the concept of Stack Overflow. And the reason is so I did some very unscientific focus grouping before coming here, and I asked my undergraduates, I was like, okay, you have a Python question, what's the first thing you do? And because I taught them very well, the first thing they said is I Google it. And the Stack Overflow for their Python-specific questions is excellent, right? I mean, it gets them the answer they're looking for quickly and efficiently. And so I think that getting some Python and astronomy, AstroPy content on Stack Overflow could be really useful. It already has it has the Python tag, so that's also nice. It's a little bit moving towards that one-stop shopping where they're already using it for their Python questions, but now they can also use it for their astronomy-specific in Python questions. It has an AstroPy tag. It is well archived and very searchable. And the downside is that, right, some of the answers to the Python questions are snarky. And so reputation for unfriendliness, however, I think that's something which we can, so as ambassadors, and maybe even with the Getting Started guide, maybe even somewhere, maybe on the astropython.org website, maybe we want to make a commitment to not being jerks. You know, I mean, seriously, right? I mean, it's an intimidating community. Anytime you say, oh, I'm going to post to a programming forum, people are like, I don't know about that. And so saying like, no, like we've really talked about this and we've decided that we're not going to be like that. And that's unacceptable behavior. And that we've decided. And so, you know, somehow addressing that directly might actually be useful. So Tom also told me about a way which you can answer your own questions. And so it might be worth actually an unconference session just to brainstorm what we think people are going to Google. We can even like tweet at it. I can even like send an email to the undergrads and be like, what are the, you know, what are the kinds of questions that you would want to be on Stack Overflow? And then we can post those questions and post the answers so that we just improve the discoverability of this particular forum. So like I'm thinking about, yeah, as an FAQ on Stack Overflow. But that's also something you can do whenever, you know, whenever anyone asks, you know, whenever you find a new question or you realize like, oh, this is something which now 2 people have asked me in a month, maybe I, you know, if I put this on Stack Overflow, then that's probably going to help a lot of people. So that was, I think, actually, before I move on, I don't have an in-between slide. Are there any other online discussion forums that I have missed? Because I missed the IRC, yeah.
AstroPydev.
Oh, AstroPydev, yeah, y'all are fine. I don't. Yeah. So there's a couple things which I have decided not to include in this talk. One, which is learning Python, right? Because there's just so many resources for learning Python. So I'm trying to focus a little bit more on astronomy, and I've also decided not to focus on the developer side, mostly because I don't know it. And so, but I agree. So there's also the dev mailing list, which seems to function well as far as I can tell.
But it is a source for resources, is all I meant.
Right.
Different kinds of resources.
Right. It is a much smaller community, and it's not a gateway. It's not an entry point. Yeah. Steve.
I was just going to say the resources on GitHub, the issue tracker, and the conversations there. That's more.
Oh, that's a great point.
But even if you're working on smaller projects.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great point. And so one of the things which I haven't figured out like where to put it. But I think one of our gateways to get is going to be via the documentation. And so I think if we can say, like, one of the first ways you can contribute is by giving us feedback on the documentation. So you're learning how to use a new package, and there was something confusing in the documentation, or you'd really like to see an example of this particular thing. You know, here's how you can formally make that request. Make a sign up for GitHub. I don't actually know how to do it. Make an issue somewhere. And so, yeah, I agree that the get issues and conversations there. It's a good point. Tom. Oh, that was time. Right, 12 o'clock. No, I think I'm okay now. So the static-ish resources, so there's the AstroBetter wiki, there's the Python for astronomers, and there's astropython.org. And I just can go over this really quickly. And so the goal, and I think this is absolutely what should happen, right, is that astropython.org to be the centralized location for resource discovery. I think as much as we can centralize, the better. And so I've been told that there's a dedicated summer student for how many weeks? 2 months. To work on revamping astropython.org, and I think we should probably have an unconference session on that to figure out what we want that to look like, to help develop and implement the plan for the revamp. I think that's also going to, I think in my opinion, one of the things which would be really important for this site is to enable as much user updates, as possible. So it's not just like 5 people that can edit it, but all of us can add things and update things. One that is worthy of mention is the AstroPy Tutorials. And so lots of people have mentioned tutorials, and I don't know if they necessarily mean AstroPy tutorials or other kinds of tutorials, but at least the AstroPy tutorials, now that I think about it, I've only helped write them. I've never sat down next to someone who has learned, who is learning the functionality from that. So even some kind of feedback on how they go would be useful. So I like how there's lots of features demoed, so it's a really great way of exposing people to the functionality of AstroPy. It's not just the functionality of AstroPy, it's the functionality of Python with astronomy applications, right? And so you're also seeing matplotlib, you're also seeing SciPy, you're also seeing basic stats. And so this seems to be like a really great place as the repository, may or may not be the right word in this context, for the IPython notebooks, which list the whole, which show off all the great things that we can do with Python, while also teaching people how to implement it themselves. So not enough features demoed, so we absolutely need more tutorials, and it's not very well known. It is a relatively new resource. So there's lots of different ways to contribute to the tutorials. You can go all the way and go ahead and write a new tutorial. You can simply suggest them, or outline them. So any level of just having a list of all the tutorials which we could write would also be helpful, because then maybe someone else will write it. Maybe someone wants to write a tutorial but doesn't know what to write, and so any levels of that contribution would be helpful. And so just like I said, working through and providing feedback on existing tutorials, having your undergrads or having your graduate students work through the tutorials and provide feedback on them would be really useful. And also promoting the tutorials at your local institutions and your own groups would be useful. So static-ish resources. Any other ones that I missed? Yeah.
I often find when I'm searching for something, somebody's blog post, it's just they're documenting how they did something.
Oh, right.
They can find it again later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know there's anything that the community can do about that.
Right.
But it does help sometimes.
Yeah, so I think that that's I think an important thing to recognize for astropython.org, which is that maybe there needs to be a way to add links that have tags so that those really useful blog posts can be discovered on astropython.org. Yes, that's how I would file. That's how I would manage that workflow. Yeah. So in addition to the focus groups, I asked my undergraduates, I said, what has been the most valuable thing for you in getting started with the programming? And they said, boot camps. Boot camps and also hack days, which I found fascinating too. I was surprised, but the boot camps. And so my undergraduates have done several different versions of the boot camps. The one, and when I say the boot camps, I do mean the getting started, like getting started with terminal, getting started with maybe with Python. So the real getting started, maybe never opened terminal before. The couple days things that people need to do probably when they're either undergrad, but definitely beginning grad school. And so Python for astronomers is good for getting started with AstroPy, and Python for astronomers. But I think we really do need more things like SciCoder and more things that are, I forget, just intro to programming, intro to stats, right? The generalized things which aren't necessarily astronomer specific. These are also things which each and every one of us could probably run at various levels of competency, just because teaching is hard. But we could probably all run especially every institution that has a summer program for undergraduates should be running a boot camp. Yeah, you just gotta have it, right? There's just so much ignorance about basic computational skills, that it's important. How to use LaTeX. So if you do think that you run a successful boot camp, or if you're planning on running a boot camp, I also highly recommend that you train others as facilitators. Right, so we want to make all of these skills go viral as much as possible. And so you want to have apprentice facilitators, apprentice instructors, right, who will then later be more confident when they go off to another institution to run that boot camp themselves.
I think one thing one should mention there is, ideally, all the advisors teach their students or if they can. That's why we do these boot camps, because we don't all want to teach the undergrads Python. But one great resource is Code Academy. It's really cute, it's really nice.
Right.
You can play for a couple of hours, and it's really fun. You sort of get a sense of achievement,
right.
And they learn quite a lot.
I agree, and I specifically, I started to compile all the slides on how to learn Python on your own, and Code Academy for sure is one of the most highly recommended. I think that we just need to really recognize how important the face-to-face interactions are, and that they really appreciate having someone who they could be like, I don't know what this command is, or I didn't remember this other thing. And I think that I think that they go hand in hand. I think that they complement each other very well, and that having, but I don't want to call it hand holding, but the hand holding is, yeah, yeah. And I also want to say the encouragement, the positive reinforcement, we all struggle with this, right? This is something, which, this is just like intro physics. We've all had to go through it. This is not just you, right? That I think is also really, really crucial, which you don't get from Code Academy. And work on the integration with software carpentry. And so a couple people have mentioned software carpentry. Software carpentry is essentially doing this, right? They've done it. They're supported by the Mozilla Foundation, right? They're supported by real money. And that's a resource which I think we can all be making better use of, right? Maybe we don't even need to run our own boot camps. Maybe we just need to find our local software carpentry and have them come in more and more often. So I think of workshops as learning new things, so where it's a little bit more specific. So they have, at least right now, they're getting higher visibility at the AAS winter meetings, and I don't know if that's happening at the other conferences outside of the US. However, they do take significant time and effort to facilitate. And so examples of workshops I would say are like advanced Get, like Get for more than 3 users, or advanced statistics. Not even advanced statistics, basic statistics, or R, or there could be a workshop specifically on FOAT utils, or a workshop specifically on spec utils, right? Where there's some specific prerequisites for the workshop, and some, there's a curriculum. They do take significant time and effort to facilitate, especially to facilitate well. And so it definitely takes practice. And so this, I think, is an extremely valuable thing which we could offer, but is probably like the biggest ask. Posting things to Facebook, y'all can do that, but running a workshop on the tool, which on the package which you've developed, that's gonna really take some time to build up to do well. So run a local workshop. That's something which I would highly recommend. Like, practice makes perfect. So maybe, demo it with 10 people, see how it goes, and then maybe if it goes well, do it again, and then maybe if it goes well, then offer it at a national conference where you have a bigger audience. Please, if you're designing anything to teach, try to develop the curricula that can be used by non-expert facilitators. Right? Think about the group of graduate students who are just on their own in their own room, and they need to learn something and they're trying to teach themselves, right? Wouldn't it be awesome if they could go through this curricula which you developed without you there to be able to teach themselves? So we really want to, if you're going to spend time developing curricula, workshops, boot camps, that kind of thing, you always want to think about how this isn't just for me, this should be used by other people as well. You want to share it. I think one of the big things which we started talking about at .astro actually in Chicago was to try to figure out a platform for maintaining the curricula and activity sharing. I don't actually have a good answer for that. I don't know where we could store all these activities, but that would be a big project, a big useful project. Hack days, I also want to be a little bit careful. I also want to call them /maker days, because it's not just hacking. A lot of people are really intimidated by the word hack days. They're like, oh, I'm not an expert coder. I can't go to a hack day. It's like, no, that's not. Like we want you to come. We want you to learn new things, and you can just sit in a group with other people and learn how to use Worldwide Telescope and get a lot of exposure. So it's an excellent intro to the community for anyone at any skill level, at any interest level. And I think we can do we need to figure out better ways of promoting them and making them more inclusive. But as with everything, the value to the astronomy establishment is increasingly obvious and recognized. And so the American Astronomical Society, at least, is now putting real money behind the hack day at the winter meeting, and it's clear to them that this is something useful. They are still intimidating, right? All of this stuff is intimidating. Writing a guide to hosting a hack day, either at your own institution, regionally, or at your own small conference, I think could be really useful. Just sort of a best practices guide for how to run your own hack day. Organize a local event. I also think what would be really great is if we had a logo that was like made at an Astro Hack Day, made by Intel with a little sound chime, that can really demonstrate, or even an acknowledgement that goes in papers that shows how much awesomeness has come out of hack days. I think that would be a really fun, especially for someone who's more artistically inclined with the logos and stuff. I think that could be a fun thing. Okay, local groups. Someone mentioned it. I don't remember. Was it Pauline? Someone had a local group. So in New York City, now it's called Astro Hackney. It was called Astro ML. Anyway, now we've decided to call it Astro Hack NY. And so this is just people who have this sort of shared common values, who want to meet maybe once a week or maybe even once a month, just to say, oh, did you see that new post on can we demo this new functionality in AstroPy, or I'm struggling with implementing this thing. Can we pair code a little bit together? The nice thing about the local groups is that you can decide what you want to do, but I think they are really useful both for interdepartment and maybe even intercampus or intercity collaboration, depending on where you are. Less intimidating than a complete strangers at a hack day, because it's your fellow grad students, it's people who you probably recognize. It does require local leadership, right? It's, to organize something monthly, right? It's just like organizing a journal club or something like that. Writing a guide to starting and running. I think Hog and I we'll do this, since Hog and I have been involved in the Astro Hackney one. And start one in your own community is definitely something. My laundry list of things you could do. I really think we could use a newsletter. So right now, the information, if anyone goes looking for it, is there. But there's no newsletter that says this is to the general community of non-Python users, or people who don't know that they're yet interested in Python, that says here is the latest developments in the Python and astronomy community. And so I think maybe like a quarterly newsletter that just kind of gives the status updates could be really useful. That has like links to, oh, there's this new post or whatever, just recent developments. Someone to coordinate the ambassadors, so someone who just kind of has a list like, oh, here are the people who are on Twitter, here's the people on Facebook, here are the people who are active on the IRC, and to just kind of give some leadership to that I think would be useful. Help write grant proposals. We brainstormed a whole bunch of ways we could use money. Work on ways of how editing the documentation can be used as an entry point. I think this is a good idea, but I don't know what the wording is. I don't know how to encourage it. I'm not quite sure of the details of that, and so that could use a leader. It sounds like lots of people want to do this, and so I'm really happy about that. To work on building the modular lessons to be incorporated into existing undergrad and grad curricula. And so really thinking about, oh, there's this thing which we always did when we did Carroll and Osley, we could turn that into an exercise. There's this thing which we always do in thermo, right, with the Planck function or something. Here's an activity which you could do, in addition to that. So think about how we can incorporate the programming and the Python functionality into the existing curricula, so that a professor can easily, right, you don't have to go through a grad curriculum committee, you don't have to ask anyone, you can just start doing it without asking permission. And then so I would also, I think I'm going to be okay, right? I would also encourage you to think about participating in at least one unconference session on one of these topics, and at least take away some way in which you're going to participate in building our community after you leave. And I apologize for the US centricness of these two slides, but I couldn't, both of these things just sort of resonated very strongly with it, that we need you, we want you, and also this is not an insurmountable problem. I really think we can do it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Actually, before questions, I'll say one quick comment. There is now Facebook uses, group for
Awesome.
Python with 22 members. So
Okay.
I have time for a couple of quick questions. So, yeah.
Yes, so we cater to, you mentioned we are a small community. We cater to the 1%, which is not a really nice thing to say sometimes. But, and that amounts for computing too. I wonder what you thought about the development of tablets and how they influence our community. Are they teaching us that we just have canned pieces of software that we actually don't learn from, just play games or fill in web forms and so on? If the larger community, and even at schools, like the LA School District, that's controversial now too, has decided to use tablets, are we going to lose on computing? Are we becoming elite computing? You don't see it as an issue?
I don't see it as an issue, no. I mean, I think that, the Girls Who Code program, the coding, I think that the STEM community at the K through 12 level is recognizing that coding is super important for a future technology workforce. And so I think thinking about it in like the bigger sense of education, then maybe we need to talk about tablets, but we're not talking about that, right? We're talking about the science community, and so I think they're going to need the command line and coding. Yeah.
Yeah, as long as computers stay cheap, but if this industry is becoming bigger, then we're getting fewer and fewer computers that are becoming more expensive because nobody wants to build.
I like to focus on problems we can actually solve.
Okay.
That's good. I'm glad I don't have to choose.
And clearly this should be continued as an unconference session, I think.
Something, some of it, yeah.
So I like the idea of sending ambassadors out to various groups that we're not really involved in right now. But one of the problems with Twitter, Facebook, etc., that you pointed out, is that they're not easily searched or archived. So I think one of the responsibilities, if we do have these ambassadors, is to have them bring the information back to this community in some centralized way. So maybe developing more on wikis and things that are searchable via Google is going to be one of the most important outcomes of that program.
Agreed. Absolutely.
Okay, well, I think that's a great place to stop and break for lunch. So let's thank Kelly again.
Yay.
Okay, just one